Hey guys, tonight we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. You know, we've covered the gladiators and the emperors and the great battles, but what about the guy who was really doing all the work? The everyday grunt. Tonight, we're going to step into the worn leather sandals of a Roman legionary. We're going to follow you, a young recruit from some dusty backwater of the empire, as you trudge through the mud and the blood and the endless training. And trust me, you probably wouldn't survive your first week, much less your first year. We're going to uncover why the dream of golden glory was often shattered by the harsh realities of military life. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in line, a long, weary line that snakes through the camp like a tired centipede. The sun beats down on your neck, and the dirt, it's caked under your fingernails from the long walk here. You've heard the tales from your grandfather, stories of heroic deeds and land granted to old veterans, of honor and riches. Your stomach feels a little hollow, but your head is full of dreams. This is your chance, the Legion, a chance to be someone, to escape the farm or the shop or whatever little insignificant life you were born into. You clutch the small bag you brought with you, a few meager possessions and the last of your mother's bread. Up ahead, a burly centurion is barking orders, his face a roadmap of old scars. He points at you, a finger as thick as a sausage, and you step forward. This is the probatio, the test. They check your height, your teeth, your eyesight. They don't care if you're strong. They'll make you strong. They're just making sure you're not a liability. You pass. A sense of relief washes over you, quickly replaced by a quiet dread. You're in. They hand you a bronze plaque, the signaculum, a dog tag of sorts with your name and legion on it. A simple piece of metal, yet it represents everything you've just sworn away. Your family, your freedom, your old life. You have just taken the sacramentum, a sacred oath to the emperor and to Rome itself. It's for life. Or, until you die in some nameless skirmish far from home. The first few days are just a blur of exhaustion. You're handed a stack of gear, a rough wool tunic, a hobnailed sandal, a wooden shield that feels like it weighs a ton, and a short sword, the gladius, that feels impossibly heavy. They don't ease you in. They break you down. You learn to march, not just walk, but to march at a pace that seems designed to break your spirit. You learn to dig, to build forts and ditches and palisades, all with a tool you didn't even know existed a week ago. You trudge, you sweat, and you fall asleep each night to the sound of snoring and the distant shouts of the night watch. This, you realize, is the real glory of Rome, a lot of very hard work. And then comes payday. Or, well, the concept of it. You were told you would receive a denarius every now and then, a solid silver coin that could buy a man a meal, a drink. Maybe a few of them, and you'd have something saved up. This is where the famous word salary comes from the Latin salarium, which sounds an awful lot like the word for salt, sal. And this is where a lot of the myths about soldiers being paid in salt come from. But I'm here to tell you, that's just a bedtime story. The Roman army was far too pragmatic for that. Your pay, your stipendium, was a fixed amount of coin, and it was a decent sum in theory. Under Augustus, a legionary could expect around 225 denarii a year. Sounds nice, right? But here's the kicker. That's the gross amount. the big, shiny number you think you're getting. You're about to learn a lesson that the modern world has taught us all too well. Taxes and deductions. Oh, so many deductions. Right there, as you're handed your first few coins, the centurion immediately takes some back, and then some more. It's for your food, your grain, your caligy, the sandals on your feet. It's for your tent, your tunic, the spear you just broke during practice. You're a walking, breathing account book, and your ledger is a sea of red numbers. You just bought yourself a job, essentially, and you have to pay for the privilege of keeping it. The grain, a major part of your diet, is deducted from your pay, and while you eat it, historians still debate whether the Roman soldier's diet was nutritionally complete, or if it was just a caloric mass to keep a body moving. So much of what we think we know is based on a collection of half-truths and scribbled notes in ancient texts. What we do know is that your first meal as a soldier is probably a hard biscuit called bucculatum, and it's about as appetizing as a mouthful of sun-baked mud. You bite down on it, and you're already missing your mother's cooking. You're a Roman soldier now, and your pay, which you just got, is already gone. But you have a job, you have a purpose, and that, in a way, is a kind of pay all its own. So you've just gotten your first taste of Roman military life, and it's a lot like the dusty, unappetizing biscuit you just bit into. It's not a pile of gold coins, but a handful of silver denarii that are already mostly gone before they even hit your hand. It's a rude awakening, a slap in the face with a heavy leather glove. But there's an even bigger myth you need to let go of right now, and it has to do with that coin you just got, and the word we still use today. Salary. You see, a lot of people think that word comes from the fact that Roman soldiers were paid in salt. It's a fun little historical tidbit that gets passed around, a piece of trivia that sounds so clever, so Roman. But like a lot of what you'll find in history, the reality is far less simple and a lot more, well, boring. The truth is, Roman soldiers were never paid in literal bags of salt. Think about it for a second. Imagine you're a military accountant. How are you going to pay an army of 5,000 men? Do you haul literal tons of salt behind the marching column? What if it rains? What if the enemy sacks your supply convoy? You'd lose the entire army's paycheck to a puddle. The logistics alone are a nightmare. And besides, the value of salt would fluctuate wildly depending on where you were. A block of salt in a coastal town would be worth a lot less than one deep in the arid deserts of North Africa. The Roman Empire was a massive, sprawling entity, and for its economy to work, it needed a standard currency, a unit of value that was the same everywhere. That's why you got silver coins, not mineral rocks. So where did the myth come from? It comes from the word itself, salarium. It didn't mean pay with salt. Instead, it was an allowance, a small stipend given to soldiers and certain officials to purchase salt. The word just happens to be a direct descendant of the Latin word for salt, sal. It was a necessity, of course, because your life as a soldier is one of marching and sweating. You're losing vital minerals every day, and salt is a cheap and easy way to replace them. The army was practical. They gave you coins, and a small part of those coins was designated for you to buy something that was essential for your survival. Think of it like a food allowance, but just for salt. The irony, of course, is that while you weren't paid in salt, salt was a big part of your life. It wasn't just for your own consumption either. Salt was one of the only reliable ways to preserve food in the ancient world. They'd salt fish, cure pork, and preserve vegetables to keep them from spoiling on a long march or a cold winter in a frontier outpost. So that ration of hardtack and dry grain you just got? It's probably only edible because of the magic of salt. It's a quiet, unglamorous part of your life, but without it, the entire supply chain of the Roman army would fall apart. It was a state monopoly, and the famous Via Salaria, the Salt Road, was a physical testament to how vital the trade was to Rome's economy and its military machine. Historians still argue over whether the salarium was a consistent payment or more of a sporadic bonus given to soldiers only when they were stationed in areas where salt was particularly scarce. It's hard to know for sure, as a lot of these records have dissolved into dust over the centuries. So the next time you hear someone say that Roman soldiers were paid in salt, you can drift off to sleep knowing the real truth. They were paid in silver. And that silver, after all the deductions were taken out for your gear and your food, was just enough to get you by. Barely. The real compensation, the real reward, wasn't coming from your military salary. It was something else entirely, something a little less certain, but a lot more exciting. It was the thrill and the danger of plunder. You've got your worn sandals on your feet, your heavy pack on your back, and a few measly coins in a small pouch. It's not what you dreamed of, but it's what you have. And tomorrow, you'll be marching again, your eyes on the horizon, hoping that the next battle brings more than just a handful of silver coins. It's a tough life, but for now, it's yours. So you've come to grips with the fact that your so-called salary isn't a magical allowance for salt, and that the coin you hold in your palm is already mostly claimed by the Army's accounting department. You feel that first pang of disappointment, that first flicker of doubt, that maybe those old stories of glory weren't quite what they seemed. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of that coin, that silver denarius in your hand, and the ones that will, hopefully, be paid out to you over the course of your service. This is the unglamorous, sordid tale of what it meant to earn a living as a Roman soldier. Your annual pay, your stipendium, was a fixed sum. In the time of Augustus, which we'll use as our example for simplicity's sake, a legionary was paid around 225 denarii per year. That doesn't sound so bad, right? That's about 900 sestertii, or 7,200 asses. Now, if all those names of coins are starting to sound like a history test, don't worry. You don't need to remember them. Just know that the denarius was the main show, the king of the coins. That number, 225, was a figure that stayed stubbornly the same for almost a century. While the prices of everything around you, bread, wine, rent, crept up with inflation, your pay stayed exactly the same. You were getting paid the same amount as a soldier from your grandfather's generation, even though your grandfather's money could buy him a lot more. It's like having your salary from 1950 in today's money. It just doesn't go very far. This fixed pay was not given to you all at once. The Roman army was far too shrewd for that. You received your stipendium in 3 installments, spread out over the year. Historians still debate the true purchasing power of a denarius in different regions of the empire, as prices could vary wildly. But a simple way to look at it is this. Your pay was enough to get you by, but not enough to get you rich. A loaf of bread might cost you a single A's, and a cheap glass of wine might be another. So you could eat and drink, but you weren't building a villa. And remember, that's your gross pay. A significant portion of that was immediately deducted for the gear you were given, the boots on your feet, and the food you ate. The army was essentially running a company store, and you were always in debt to it. Compared to other jobs in Roman society, your pay wasn't terrible, But it wasn't great either. A skilled artisan, a baker, or a stonemason could earn more than you, especially if they were in high demand. But their work wasn't stable. A bad season, a slow week, and they might not have any income at all. You, on the other hand, had a guaranteed paycheck, rain or shine. You had a place to sleep and food in your belly. The army was a promise of stability in an unpredictable world. It was a trade-off. You traded your freedom and the chance of great wealth for the certainty of a paycheck, a hot meal, and a bunk to sleep in. And the most interesting thing about those coins is what was happening to them, even as you held them in your hand. Over time, successive emperors would start to debase the coinage. They would mix in cheaper metals, like copper, with the silver. So the shiny new denarius you were handed had less silver in it than the one your father might have received. It was a subtle form of inflation, a trick played on the people by the government, and one that further eroded your already meager buying power. You can almost feel it in your pouch, those coins with their smiling emperor's face slowly losing their worth. You're a part of a system that's designed to keep you on the move and in service. The military was a machine, a well-oiled machine of conquest and control, and you were a cog in that machine. Your pay, while technically a decent sum, was engineered to keep you exactly where the army wanted you, focused on your next meal, your next set of boots, and the next campaign that might finally bring you some real treasure. You're not saving up for a vacation. You're just getting by. Day by grueling day, this financial tether keeps you from running, from deserting. It's an unspoken contract. You serve, and in exchange, you get to eat. You don't have to worry about where your next meal is coming from, only about how to survive until it arrives. It's a simple, brutal existence, and it all revolves around those few coins you just received. So you have your first handful of silver coins, a meager sum that represents your hard work, and you've come to terms with the fact that it's a fixed amount, one that inflation is slowly eating away at. But what you haven't fully grasped yet is the full extent of the military's accounting practices. It's not just a simple deduction here and there. It's a systemic, iron-fisted control over your finances designed to keep you beholden to the army from the moment you enlist until the day you earn your discharge. Your pay, you see, isn't really yours. It's an illusion of independence, a few shiny coins in your pocket that are always in danger of being taken back. This is the part of your service that really feels like a trap, a slow strangulation of your dreams of wealth. Let's break down where all that money is going. First and foremost, you have to pay for your food. The army, in its great benevolence, provides you with a basic grain ration, the frumentum. It's a set amount of wheat or barley that you and your messmates in the contubernium, your little squad of 8, have to mill, bake, and turn into something edible. This grain, which is the cornerstone of your diet, is not free. It's deducted directly from your pay. And while it's a fair price, it's a constant drain on your already anemic income. You might be dreaming of a day when you can buy a whole chicken or a few bottles of wine, but for now, your money is just paying for the very basic sustenance that keeps you marching. But food is just the beginning. Remember all that heavy, wonderful gear you were handed on your first day? The segmented armor, the lorica segmentata, that feels like it weighs more than you do? The heavy shield, the scutum with its distinctive dome, the sword and the spear, all of it, every single piece, is an expense. The army issues it to you, but they expect you to pay them back. It's a long-term loan, essentially, and the payments are automatically deducted from your meager paychecks. If you lose your shield in a skirmish or damage your sword, you have to buy a replacement. The cost of a good gladius could be an entire month's pay or more, a sum so large it would leave you in debt for the better part of a year. It's a cruel system. The very tools you need to survive and protect the empire are the tools that are keeping you poor. And it's not just the big, shiny, expensive stuff. You have to pay for your boots, your kalagi, and if they wear out from all the endless marching, you have to buy new ones. Your wool tunic and cloak, also not free. Even your tent, a shared expense among your squad, is something that comes out of your collective wages. So when you're looking at your pay stub, if such a thing existed, it would be a long list of deductions for your grain, for your boots, for your armor, for your weapons, and even for the funeral fund to ensure you get a proper burial if you die on the march. Historians still argue about the exact percentage of pay that was siphoned away for these necessities, but a good estimate is that around 50% of your gross pay was gone before you ever had a chance to touch it. It's a staggering amount, and it's a system designed to keep you from saving up and running off. You are, in every sense of the word, an asset of the Roman state, and they are ensuring you can't simply walk away. So while you stand here, tired and covered in dust, you have a moment to think. Your dream of wealth is slowly fading. Your pay isn't meant to make you rich. It's meant to keep you alive and equipped, and that's about it. It's a system of control, a brilliant, brutal, and effective system that makes sure the might of the Roman Empire is always fully staffed, fully fed, and fully armed. You are a part of that efficiency. You are a cog in a machine that is constantly turning, and your pay is the oil that keeps that cog moving. It's not glorious. It's not heroic. But for now, it's your life. And it all leads you to wonder, if your pay is so low and your deductions so high, where on earth do you get the money for a drink? For a night out? Where does a soldier find a little bit of extra coin? Well, for that, you have to turn to the less official side of Roman military life. So you've just figured out that your life as a Roman soldier is a lot like being on a very long, very tiring subscription plan, where your paycheck is just a receipt for all the gear you've been charged for. Your dreams of a fat purse are looking pretty thin. But there is a way to get ahead. It's not in the official ledgers or on any of the scrolls. It's in the dust and the chaos of the battlefield. It's the unofficial economy of the Roman army, the chaotic, dangerous, and sometimes incredibly lucrative world of plunder. For a soldier like you, fresh-faced and already broke, this is where the real money is made. It's the unofficial high-risk compensation that can change your life or end it in a flash. You've been marching for weeks, maybe months. Your feet are sore, the pack on your back feels heavier than ever, and the thought of another bowl of watered-down grain is making you reconsider all your life choices. Then the bugles sound. The battle is over. The enemy is scattered, or maybe they're all lying still in the mud and the blood. Your centurion, his voice now a little softer, a little more human, gives you the signal. You have a few hours, maybe a day, to take what you can. This is your moment. You break ranks with your fellow soldiers, and you enter the enemy camp. It's a messy, violent scramble. You're not a cohesive fighting unit anymore. You're a swarm of greedy locusts picking the carcass of a defeated army. You're looking for anything shiny, a pouch of coins, a piece of jewelry, a fine tunic, a decorative sword hilt. You stuff it into your bag, your hands shaking with a mix of adrenaline and greed. The Roman state, of course, got the lion's share of the booty. The gold and silver statues, the great treasures, the valuable slaves, those went to the generals, to the coffers of Rome. But the smaller, individual spoils were yours to keep. This system was a key part of what motivated a Roman soldier to fight so fiercely. A legionary wasn't just fighting for the honor of Rome. They were fighting for the chance to make some real money. The official pay was just a way to keep you from starving. The plunder was your lottery ticket. And it was a gamble. You could spend days sifting through the remains of a battlefield and come up with nothing more than a few rusty coins and a cheap piece of jewelry. Or on a very lucky day, you could find a small chest of gold coins hidden in a chieftain's tent. A find that would set you up for life. But with this opportunity came immense risk. You have to watch your back, not just for any straggling enemy soldiers, but for your fellow legionaries. In the chaotic free-for-all of plunder, a knife in the back over a single piece of jewelry wasn't unheard of. The centurion and the other officers would try to maintain a sense of order, but in the heat of the moment, anything could happen. This is the wild, lawless side of the Roman army. It's a side that is rarely talked about in the grand stories of conquest. It's the moment when discipline slips and humanity's more base instincts take over. Historians still argue about the true ratio of a soldier's wealth from official pay versus what they gained through plunder. Some scholars believe that plunder was by far the more important source of income, while others argue that it was too unpredictable to be relied upon. It was a crapshoot, but for you, it was the only real game in town. So you return to your tent, your sack a little heavier, your heart beating a little faster. You lay out your haul, a few low-value coins, a brooch that's probably not worth much, and maybe a nice piece of leather you can use to repair your own gear. It's not the gold treasure you dreamed of, but it's something. It's better than nothing. And as you fall asleep, you're no longer dreaming of a fixed wage, but of the next battle, the next siege, the next opportunity to get rich, or to die trying. This is the unofficial contract you sign when you join the Legion. You get a steady, meager wage for your labor, but for your courage, for your willingness to risk your life, you get the chance to grab some glory and maybe, just maybe, some real wealth. You just have to survive to enjoy it. You've got your hand in your pouch, feeling the few coins and the handful of plunder you've managed to scavenge, and you feel that familiar gnawing mix of hope and despair. Hope for the next big score. Despair at the thought of another grueling month with nothing to show for it. But as you look around the sprawling camp, you see faces that don't look quite like your own. They speak with different accents, wear slightly different armor, and they're part of a different kind of deal with Rome. These are the auxiliary troops, the auxilia, and their story of pay and purpose is a fascinating and far more patient one. You're a Roman citizen, maybe not a fancy one, but you're a citizen. These men, for the most part, are not. They are from the corners of the empire, from recently conquered lands or allied territories. Gauls, Thracians, Germans, Syrians. They come from all over, and they fill the vital roles that the legions themselves couldn't or wouldn't. They are the cavalry, the archers, the slingers, the light infantry. They perform the scouting and the skirmishes and the dirty work that allows the legions to be the unstoppable hammer of the empire. And for their service, their pay is a fraction of yours. A legionary's pay was around 225 denarii a year. An auxiliary soldier, on average, would earn about a third of that. Maybe 75 denarii a year, sometimes less, sometimes a little more, but always significantly less than you. So you have to wonder, As you watch them march or stand guard, their eyes just as weary as yours. What's the point? Why would you sign up for 25 years of backbreaking labor and constant risk for a pittance? The answer is simple, and it's the most valuable thing Rome could offer: citizenship. For these men, the reward wasn't money. It was the promise of a better life for their children. After 25 years of loyal service, they and their families would be granted Roman citizenship. This was a priceless gift. It meant legal protections, the right to own land, the ability to make contracts, and the chance for their children to climb the social ladder. It was a trade-off of a different kind, a long game. They were sacrificing their present for their future. You watch as a contingent of Syrian archers practice their shots, their movements a stark contrast to your heavy, methodical training. Their gear, while functional, isn't as standardized as yours. The Romans, in their pragmatic way, allowed these auxiliary units to keep some of their native fighting styles and equipment, making them more effective at their specialized tasks. You know, historians still debate how well integrated auxiliary troops were into the Roman military culture. Were they always considered outsiders, or did they slowly become part of the Roman machine? It's a question that gets to the heart of Rome's success. The empire could absorb and integrate conquered peoples and use their strengths for its own benefit. It was a kind of genius, really, a brutal, calculating genius. Their daily life is just as grueling as yours, if not more so. They were often put on the front lines, in the most dangerous positions. They were the ones who faced the initial onslaught in a battle, or who were sent on perilous scouting missions. They were, in many ways, more expendable, but they accepted it, because for them, the end goal was worth it. That small bronze plaque, the diploma that was given to them upon their discharge, was more valuable than any amount of gold. It was a passport to a new life. While you might be dreaming of plunder and an early discharge, they are dreaming of the day they can return home, not as a tribesman, but as a Roman, with a Roman family. So as you sit by the fire tonight, thinking about your own meager pay and your debts to the army, you can look at the men from the far reaches of the world and understand their deal. Their pay is meager, but their reward is immense. Their sacrifice is for their family's future, not just for a few coins. It makes your own struggles feel a little bit more relatable. You're all just trying to get by, to make a name for yourself, to survive. It's just that you're doing it for money, and they're doing it for a name. So you've come to terms with your lot in life: a meager wage, heavy deductions, and the constant hope of a big score from plunder. You've looked at the auxiliaries with their different deal and their patient wait for citizenship. But as you're standing in line, waiting for your next meal or your next set of orders, you look at the man in charge, the man with the strange helmet crest, the one who seems to move with a quiet authority that you can only dream of, the centurion. He's not some nobleman or an emperor's son. He's a man who started exactly where you are now, and his life, his pay, and his perks are a different story entirely. A story that, if you play your cards right and survive long enough, could one day be yours. You watch him now, his back straight, his gaze sharp. He carries a stout wooden stick, the vites or vine staff, a symbol of his authority. You know that stick very well. You've felt it against your back on more than one occasion. It's a tool for discipline, a constant reminder of who is in charge and what happens when you get out of line. He's the backbone of the army, the man who lives and breathes his command. He's responsible for the 80 men in his century. Your life and the lives of your fellow soldiers are quite literally in his hands. He trains you. He punishes you. He leads you into battle. He's the one who gets you from point A to point B in one piece. And for that immense responsibility, he is paid handsomely. While you are earning your 225 denarii a year, a centurion would be making a minimum of 15 times that. 15. So while you are scraping by on your 60 denarii every 4 months, your centurion is getting about 900. And that's just the base pay. It was a staggering difference, and it was a deliberate one. The Roman military needed a strong, experienced, and loyal middle management. They needed men who knew the job, who had served for years, and who had a reason to be devoted to the army. That reason was money. A centurion's pay was enough to buy land, to own a small business, to live a life of comfort. It was the ultimate carrot on a stick for a young, ambitious soldier. But a centurion's wealth didn't just come from his official salary. He had other ways of making money, side hustles that would make a modern-day CEO blush. He could, and often did, lend money to his own soldiers at a high interest rate, a sort of army-run payday loan business. He would be given a larger share of the plunder from campaigns. Generals, wanting to keep their most valuable officers happy, would often give centurions significant bonuses. They would be the first to get the best loot, the finest slaves, the most valuable pieces of art. Their position gave them access to opportunities that you, a simple foot soldier, could only dream of. You can almost see the difference in their gear. While your armor is functional and well-maintained, his might be more decorative. His helmet crest is a clear sign of his rank, but even his shield might have a slightly fancier emblem. He's not just a soldier. He's an officer. He's a professional. He's the one who gives you your orders, and he's the one who's getting rich while doing it. It's a powerful motivator. You know that if you just survive, if you prove your worth, if you do exactly what he says, you could one day have that same power, that same wealth. It's a tough climb, but it's possible. Historians still debate just how common it was for a centurion to amass a fortune and retire to a life of luxury. We know it happened, but for every centurion who retired to a villa in Italy, there were probably dozens who died in some muddy skirmish on a distant frontier, their wealth left to their heirs. It was a high-risk, high-reward job, and the risks were just as real as the rewards. So you've caught a glimpse of the good life, the life of a centurion who gets paid 100 times more than you and gets all the best perks. It's a dream, a distant star you can fix your tired eyes on. But for now, for the foreseeable future, that's not your reality. Your reality is the dirt, the dust, and the back of the man in front of you. Your reality is the endless, mind-numbing grind that made the Roman army the most feared fighting force in the world. This is the unglamorous, unromantic side of being a soldier, the part they don't tell you about in the stories of great victories. This is your daily life. Your day starts before dawn. A bugle sounds, a sharp, piercing note that cuts through the sleepy quiet of the camp. You roll out of your tent, your body stiff from another night spent on the hard ground. You grab a quick bite to eat, maybe a handful of bread and some dried dates, and you fall into line with your contubernium. You strap on your heavy armor, the metal plates of your lorica segmentata clinking and clanking as you move. You shoulder your pack, your sarcina, which, remember, you're paying for. It's a lot. It's your shield, your cooking pot, your tools, your tent pole, and 100 other small necessities. The weight digs into your shoulders, a familiar, unwelcome presence. And then you start marching. You'll march for 20 miles, maybe more. You'll do it under the relentless sun, in the pouring rain, or through a swirling snowstorm. You'll march on roads that you, yourself, might have helped build. And you'll do it at a pace that is both fast and steady. It's a rhythm that gets into your bones, a constant left-right that becomes the soundtrack of your life. This isn't just walking, it's a forced march. And it's not just marching, it's also a constant state of readiness. You're always in formation, always prepared for an ambush. Your eyes are always scanning the horizon, your hand always near your sword. It's a kind of exhausting, heightened awareness that never quite goes away. And then, as the sun begins to set, you reach your destination. You're not done for the day. Oh no. This is when the real work begins. You and every single man around you become an engineer, a builder, a laborer. You take off your heavy pack and you grab your dalabra, a pickaxe-like tool that every soldier carries. You start digging. You dig a trench, a deep, wide ditch around what will become the night's camp, the castra. You cut down trees and sharpen the ends to make a palisade. You build a wall of dirt and sticks that seems to rise out of nowhere. It's an incredible feat of engineering, and you do it every single night. The entire camp, a perfectly squared-off fortress, is built from scratch and torn down the next morning. This is the unglamorous secret of Rome's military success. They weren't just great fighters. They were the greatest builders and engineers the ancient world had ever seen. The whole time, the centurion is watching, barking orders, making sure no one is slacking off. He's the one who makes sure the work is done, that the camp is safe. You're just a part of the machine, a cog in a military engine that is constantly turning. Historians still argue about the psychological impact of this endless cycle of marching and building. The constant repetition, the physical exhaustion, the lack of any real downtime. Was it a form of mind control? Did it break men's spirits, or did it forge them into an unbreakable whole? It's hard to say, but you can feel it in your bones. The rhythm of the march, the swing of the pickaxe, the satisfying thud of the log you just chopped. It all becomes a part of you. It's not glamorous, it's not heroic. But for now, it's what you do. It's your life. And it's the price you pay for that meager wage and the slim hope of a better future. The sun has finally set, and the last ditch has been dug. The last pole of the palisade hammered into place. Your body aches in places you didn't even know existed. But for now, the work is done. You can finally rest. You make your way back to your tent, the simple canvas and leather structure that serves as your home. It's shared with the 7 other men of your contubernium, your little squad of 8. This is your personal space, a tiny, crowded slice of the Roman Empire that you get to call your own. And it's not glamorous. It's not a lot. But after a day like today, it's everything. You crawl inside, the smell of sweat, wet wool, and stale food hitting you immediately. It's a smell that you've come to associate with safety, with the end of a long day. Inside, there are no beds with soft mattresses and pillows. There are no warm blankets. There is just the hard ground and maybe a thin sleeping mat made of straw or animal hide. You'll curl up with the man next to you for warmth, or just to save space. There is no privacy here. You live in a constant state of being surrounded by the 7 other men who know your habits, your fears, and the smell of your feet better than you do. It's an intimate and strange existence, a kind of forced brotherhood forged in discomfort. Your personal belongings are few and far between. The army doesn't want you carrying anything you don't absolutely need. Your pack, your sarcina, is filled with your armor and tools, and a little bit of food. But tucked away in a corner, you have a few small things that are yours and yours alone. Maybe a small bronze amulet given to you by your mother, a tiny statue of a god to ward off evil spirits. Maybe a small wax tablet and a stylus, just so you can write a letter home when you get a chance. You might have a pair of dice or a board for a simple game of chance to pass the time. These are the small pieces of your old life, the tiny remnants of the person you used to be before you became a soldier. This is the quiet side of military life. The part between the marching and the fighting, the part where you just sit in the darkness, listening to the soft snores of the men around you, and you think. You think about home. You think about your family. You think about all the things you gave up for this life. Historians still argue about the true nature of the bonds between these 8 men. Were they really brothers? Did they truly care for each other? Or was it just a matter of survival, a pragmatic alliance forged in close quarters? It's hard to say, but you know that in a battle, these are the 7 men you would trust with your life. You've seen them at their best and their worst. You've shared their hardships and their small victories. You might pull out your razor and a small piece of wood, a bit of spare time to groom yourself. You might clean the rust off your armor, a task that has become as automatic as breathing. It's a constant, never-ending list of duties. But here, in the dim light of a flickering lamp, surrounded by the quiet hum of the sleeping camp, you finally feel like you can breathe. The outside world, the endless march, the barking orders, they all seem a million miles away. This is your small, unglamorous slice of life. It's not much, but for now, it's enough. You lay down on the hard ground, your body protesting, and you pull your rough wool cloak over your shoulders. You're a Roman soldier, a cog in a great machine, and a part of a small, grimy group of men who are all just trying to get through to tomorrow. And as your eyes finally close, you can hear the soft murmur of the camp, a lullaby of whispered conversations, distant snoring, and the creak of the guard on watch. Sweet dreams. The night has settled, and you're finally drifting off to sleep. Your body, a symphony of aches and pains, is a testament to the hard work you put in all day. Your stomach, however, is a different kind of protest. It's rumbling, a low, guttural growl that reminds you that you're a creature of sustenance, and you're not getting nearly enough of the good stuff. Now that we've talked about where your money goes, let's talk about what that money gets you. This is the unglamorous but vital history of a Roman soldier's diet. It's not the lavish feasts you see in movies. It's a grueling, monotonous meal plan designed for one thing and one thing only: to keep you moving. Your main meal is bread, not the soft, fluffy stuff you might find in a bakery in Rome, but a hard, dense, and often stale loaf that you and your messmates have to bake yourselves. The army provides you with a ration of wheat, the frumentum, which you then have to mill and turn into a paste, and then cook. It's a lot of work for a meal. You might break it down into a kind of porridge, or you might just chew on the hard, dry bread for a while. It's a high-carb, high-calorie diet designed to fuel your long marches and your back-breaking labor. But it's not exactly a culinary delight. Your ancestors probably ate it, and their ancestors before them. It's a diet that's as old as the empire itself. But it's not just bread. Your rations also include some form of animal fat, a kind of lard that's not exactly delicious, but provides much-needed energy. You might get a small bit of cheese, some dried pulses like lentils or chickpeas, and maybe some bacon or other salted meat if you're lucky. And of course, there's wine. Not the good stuff, not the kind of wine that's aged in oak barrels and drunk by senators. It's sour, it's cheap, and it's watered down, but it's an important part of your diet. It's also often mixed with vinegar and water to create a drink called pasca. This drink was both refreshing and had antiseptic properties that helped prevent waterborne diseases. It's the kind of practical solution the Roman army was famous for. This food is your fuel. You're not eating for pleasure. You're eating for survival. And you're not just eating for yourself either. You're eating for the entire army. The logistics of feeding a legion of 5,000 men, and sometimes an even larger number of auxiliary troops, was a monumental task. The Roman army had to have a massive, well-organized supply train that followed them everywhere they went. They had to be able to get a constant stream of grain and other supplies from the provinces to the front lines. It was a marvel of ancient efficiency, a silent part of their military might. The success of a campaign often depended as much on the quartermaster as it did on the general. If the food ran out, the army would fall apart. So you eat what you're given, and you're thankful for it. Because you've seen what happens when the supply lines fail. You've seen men go hungry. You've seen the kind of desperate acts that can happen when an army is starving. Historians still debate whether a soldier's diet was nutritionally complete or if it led to long-term health problems. Some argue that the high carbohydrate intake was a perfect fuel for marching, while others point to skeletal remains that show signs of vitamin deficiencies. But for you, sitting in your tent at night, none of that matters. All that matters is that you're full, you're tired, and you're ready to sleep. You've survived another day, and you've got the energy to do it all over again tomorrow. And as you finally drift off, you can almost taste the simple, bland flavor of the bread and the slightly sour taste of the wine. It's the taste of a Roman soldier's life, and it's the taste of survival. The quiet of the night in the camp is broken only by the sound of your own breathing and the soft snores of the men around you. You've just finished thinking about your simple, grueling diet, and a question that's always at the back of your mind starts to come forward. Why? Why are you doing this? Why are you enduring the endless marches, the heavy pack, the miserable food, and the meager pay? The answer is not in your pouch. It's not in the plunder you might have scavenged. The answer is 25 years away on a piece of parchment that represents your final compensation, the veteran's pension, and the land grant. This is the ultimate prize, the one thing that makes all the suffering and all the debt worth it. After 25 years of loyal service, you would be granted an onesta missio, an honorable discharge. It was the moment you had been living for. Your military service was over. Your life was your own again. And Rome was going to give you a payment that was truly life-changing. It was a massive lump sum of money, a premia, that was more than you would have earned in your entire career combined. In the time of Augustus, that payment was a staggering 12,000 denarii. That's 53 times your annual pay. That's a fortune. It's enough to buy a small house, to start a business, to live a life of comfort. It was the ultimate bonus, a golden handshake for surviving a quarter century of military life. But that wasn't the only option. In fact, for many years, the primary reward was a plot of land. You would be given a piece of property in a newly conquered province, a place far from your home, but a place that was now a part of the Roman Empire. You would be part of a veteran colony, a new town founded by soldiers just like you. The purpose of this was twofold. First, it was a way for the Roman government to settle new territories and ensure that they would remain loyal. By putting old soldiers there, they were creating a permanent, loyal, and militarily capable population in a newly acquired land. You wouldn't just be a farmer, you'd be a Roman citizen, a pillar of the community, and a living reminder of the might of the Roman state. The money to pay for these benefits came from a special military treasury, the Aerarium Militare, which was established by Augustus. It was a genius piece of bureaucracy, a fund specifically designed to ensure that the army could always afford to pay its veterans. It was funded by special taxes on inheritances and sales, so the burden was spread throughout the empire, but the money was guaranteed to be there when you needed it. Historians still debate whether all veterans actually received their promised land. We know that the system sometimes broke down, that there were periods of corruption and mismanagement, but for the most part, the promise was kept. It was a deal, and the army made sure it was a deal you could rely on. So as you lie in your tent tonight, you're not just a soldier on a campaign. You're an investor. You're investing your youth, your body, and your courage into a deal that will, hopefully, pay off in the end. You're not getting rich in the present. You're just scraping by. But you're building a future where you don't have to carry a sarcina or march for 20 miles a day. A future where you can own a piece of land and be a respected member of a community. You're one of the few who are lucky enough to survive the long, grueling years of service. You're one of the few who will get to cash in that ultimate paycheck, to finally retire from the service of Rome and live a peaceful, comfortable life. It's a powerful thought, a quiet hope that gets you through the long, dark nights. And it's the reason why so many men were willing to sign up for a life of meager pay and endless work. You've just been thinking about the end goal, that glorious, far-off moment when you'll be a free man with a piece of land and a pension. But as you lie here, your thoughts are not just about money and plots of land. You're a human being after all. You're lonely, and you have feelings. So what about love? What about family? The Roman army had a very strict answer for that. Officially, you were not allowed to marry. Your loyalty was to Rome, to your commander, and to the man next to you. A wife and children were considered a distraction, a weakness that could compromise your commitment to the state. But, as with most things in history, the official rule was one thing, and the reality was something else entirely. For most of your service, you'll be stationed in or near a town, a fort, a city. And in those places, there are people. There are women. And just because you can't be legally married to them doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with them. In fact, many soldiers formed unofficial, common law partnerships. You might live with a local woman in a small house just outside the camp gates. You might have children with her. These were not legal families in the eyes of Rome, but in every other way, they were your family. It was a de facto life, lived just on the edge of legality. You'd share your meager pay, you'd share your life, and you'd share your hopes for the future. This was a kind of open secret. The centurions and officers would have known about it. The local populace would have known about it. It was a part of military life, but it came with its own set of unique hardships. Because you weren't legally married, your children were considered illegitimate. They had no rights to your property, and if you were suddenly moved to a new post, as you so often were, you had to leave them all behind. There was no military housing for families, no support system. It was a constant state of uncertainty, a kind of low-grade emotional risk you took every single day. A lot of soldiers probably spent their nights in their tents, worrying about their unofficial family, wondering if they would ever see them again. This all changed much later, in the 2nd century AD, when the Emperor Septimius Severus, a former general himself, lifted the marriage ban. He understood that a soldier with a family was not a distracted soldier, but a loyal soldier, a soldier with more to lose. But for you, a soldier in the earlier empire, that's just a dream for a future you might not live to see. For you, the promise is different. The deal is that if you make it to retirement, you can then legally marry the woman you've been living with, and your children would be legitimized and granted Roman citizenship. It was a carrot on a stick, a promise of a real family and a real future, if only you could survive long enough to claim it. Historians still debate whether the marriage ban was primarily to maintain military discipline or to save the state money on paying benefits to soldiers' families. It was probably a little bit of both, a cold, calculating decision made by a very pragmatic government. You can almost feel the weight of that decision as you lie there, thinking about the woman you left behind, or the woman you hope to one day find. You're fighting for Rome, but you're living for her. Your loyalty is to the eagle, but your heart is somewhere else entirely. It's a conflict that every soldier must have faced, a quiet struggle between duty and desire. It's the hidden, unwritten part of your life as a legionary, the part that makes you feel a little less like a cog in a machine and a little more like a man. And as you finally drift off to sleep, you're not just dreaming of a better life, you're dreaming of a home, a real one, with a real family. The night has been full of soft dreams, of family and a future that might one day be yours. But as the bugle sounds and the first light of dawn cuts through the darkness of your tent, you're brought back to the hard reality of your life. The ache in your bones isn't from just a long march. It's from the ever-present threat of disease. The chill in the air isn't just the morning dew. It's a constant reminder of the fevers and sickness that could take you out of the fight just as easily as an enemy sword. This is the unglamorous, often forgotten truth of being a Roman soldier. The greatest killer on the battlefield wasn't a barbarian warrior, but a microscopic enemy you couldn't see, an invisible foe lurking in the water you drank and the air you breathed. You see it every day. A man who was marching beside you one day is shivering with a fever the next. A small cut on a man's hand from his own sword becomes a festering, pus-filled wound that slowly rots away his arm. More Roman soldiers died from disease and non-combat-related injuries than from actual fighting on the battlefield. It's a sobering statistic, one that gets to the heart of the true peril of your service. A noble death in battle, a quick thrust of a spear, a flash of steel, that's a story. A slow, agonizing death from dysentery, a fever that slowly bakes your brains, a cough that never goes away. That's just a tragedy, a quiet end that no one writes songs about. The Roman army did have doctors, the Medici, and they were some of the best in the ancient world. They had field hospitals, the valetudinaria, and they could perform some truly incredible surgeries, like amputations. But their knowledge was rudimentary. They didn't know about germs or infections. They didn't understand the importance of sanitation. And so a simple wound, if left untreated or treated poorly, could easily become a death sentence. The water you drank from a river might be carrying a plague that could wipe out an entire century of men in a week. The food you ate, even with the addition of salt, might have been spoiled, leading to a crippling stomach sickness. The crowded conditions of the camp, with 8 men living in a small tent, were a perfect breeding ground for disease. One man's cough could quickly become a platoon-wide problem. You're constantly vigilant, not just for the enemy, but for the signs of sickness in yourself and the men around you. You're always trying to keep your wounds clean, to boil your water if you can. You're always checking the other men for signs of fever or a strange rash. It's a quiet, constant struggle that adds to the immense physical and mental toll of your life. And it's a struggle that you often lose. You'll bury more men from disease than from battle. You'll sit by a man's side as he wastes away from a fever, and you'll know that there's nothing you, or even the best doctor, can do. It's a helplessness that cuts through the bravado and the discipline of military life. Historians still debate the true effectiveness of Roman military medicine. While we have evidence of their tools and their hospitals, we also have evidence of the incredibly high mortality rates from disease. Some argue that their medical practices were actually counterproductive, that the very things they did to try and heal men were often making them sicker. Others argue that it was a case of being the best of the worst, that without their medical practices, the mortality rates would have been even higher. It's a question that gets at the heart of the limitations of ancient knowledge. But for you, on the ground, none of that matters. All that matters is that you're healthy today. All that matters is that you're not coughing, that you don't have a fever, that your stomach isn't churning. It's a simple hope, but it's a powerful one. You're a Roman soldier, a part of the greatest fighting force in the world, and your greatest enemy isn't the men across the battlefield. It's the microscopic world all around you. And as you finally close your eyes, you're not just dreaming of a better future, you're just hoping for a healthier tomorrow. You've just been thinking about all the ways you could die on this campaign, and most of them have nothing to do with a barbarian's sword. The thought is sobering, a harsh reminder that life is fragile and a soldier's life is even more so. But in a strange way, this is exactly what you signed up for. You are a Roman soldier, not because you were forced, but because you chose this. You chose the discipline, the danger, and the long, grueling work. And as you sit here, thinking about the grim reality of your existence, you have to ask yourself why. Why would any man volunteer for this? The answer is simple, and it gets to the heart of the Roman Empire. The army, with all its dangers, was an escape from poverty. It was a path to a better life. You were probably a poor farmer's son from the countryside, or a landless laborer from a crowded city. Your life before the army was one of uncertainty. You worked when you could, you ate when you could, and you lived in a state of constant fear. A bad harvest, a sudden illness, a local plague, and your life could be over. The work you did was backbreaking, and the pay was never guaranteed. You were, in every sense of the word, expendable. But the army offered a promise. It offered a steady paycheck, a place to sleep, and food to eat. It wasn't luxurious, but it was predictable. In a world of chaos, the army was an island of stability. You can almost see your old life now, a vivid memory of hunger and uncertainty. Your family struggling to make ends meet. Your father's hands raw and cracked from a lifetime of labor. That's why you signed up. That's why you took the oath and accepted the meager pay and the brutal discipline. It was a deal. You gave up your freedom, your youth, and your life, and in return, you got a guaranteed existence. You got to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And more importantly, you got a chance to rise. You've already seen the centurion, remember? You've seen the kind of money and power he has. He wasn't born into it. He earned it, just like you can. The army was a meritocracy, a place where a man could rise based on his courage, his skill, and his endurance, not on his family name or his father's fortune. The army offered a unique legal status, the militaris, that set you apart from civilians. It gave you certain privileges and rights that a normal citizen might not have had. It made you a part of an elite class, a group of men who were respected and feared. This was a form of social mobility that was almost impossible in any other part of Roman society. You could be a poor farmer's son one day and a centurion with a fortune the next. And even if you didn't rise, even if you just survived your 25 years of service, you would still get that massive pension and that plot of land. You would return home not as a beggar, but as a respected veteran, a pillar of the community, a man who had seen the world and served the empire. Historians still debate just how accessible these higher ranks were to the average foot soldier. Was it really a meritocracy, or was it mostly a matter of who you knew? While we have evidence of men rising from the ranks, we also know that a lot of it was a matter of luck and having a good patron. But for you, sitting in your tent at night, the dream is real. The possibility is there. It's a powerful motivator, a quiet hope that gets you through the hard days and the cold nights. It's the reason why the Roman army, with all its hardships, was never short on volunteers. It was a promise, and it was a promise that a lot of men were willing to die for. You've just been thinking about the choice you made, the long and winding road that brought you here to this quiet camp, to this place where a life of poverty was traded for a life of purpose and the hope of a better future. But as you lie here, your journey is also a part of a much larger, much longer story. The story of what it meant to be a professional soldier and how the Roman way of war, with all its boring details about pay and deductions, would echo through history for thousands of years. The system you are a part of, the one that frustrates you with its deductions and tantalizes you with its promises, is the very blueprint for every professional army that has come after it. Before Rome, armies were often citizen militias, men who would drop their farming tools, grab a spear, and fight for their city-state, only to return to their fields after the battle was won. But Rome, in its cold, pragmatic genius, created something new, a professional, standing army, a force of men who were not just citizens, but full-time soldiers. And for that to work, they had to be paid. They had to have a reason to serve for decades on end, to leave their homes and their families behind. The system of a fixed salary, the idea of a pension, the promise of a land grant, all of these things were Roman innovations. They were the brilliant, unglamorous gears that made the Roman war machine turn. The very word soldier itself is believed to come from the Latin solidus, a type of Roman coin, a physical representation of the fact that these men were professionals, paid to do a job. You see, your struggles with pay, your hopes for a pension, your grudging acceptance of military life, they were not unique to you. They were the very things that defined the life of a professional soldier for centuries to come. The Roman model of military finance, with its reliance on a state treasury and its system of long-term compensation, was a masterstroke of political and military engineering. It created a force that was loyal, not just to a general, but to the state itself. A force that was disciplined and effective because its loyalty was bought with the promise of a stable life and a comfortable retirement. Historians still debate whether this reliance on a professional army was a sign of a strong, centralized state or a symptom of a society that was losing its civic virtues and its willingness to fight for a cause without a paycheck. It's a question that gets at the heart of the Roman Empire, and perhaps every empire since. But for you, a tired man in a cold tent, none of that matters. All that matters is your own journey, the choice you made, the long, grueling days, the meager pay, the small victories, the constant fear of disease, the flicker of hope for a future you might never see. You're a part of something that will one day be written about in history books. But for now, you're just a man. You're a part of a legacy that will shape the world. The legacy of the professional soldier. The legacy of a man who traded his life for a paycheck, and in doing so, built an empire. You lie there now, the cold seeping into your bones, the sounds of the camp a low murmur. The fire crackles somewhere in the distance, a quiet, soothing sound that fades in and out. The sounds of the day, the marching, the digging, the shouting, are gone. The only things left are the soft whispers of the men around you, the gentle rustle of the canvas, and your own slow, steady breathing. You've journeyed through the dust and the discipline of a Roman soldier's life, and now you can finally let go. The weight of the pack on your back, the strain in your legs, the clatter of your armor, let them all fade away. The thoughts of pay and plunder and pensions, let them all drift off into the dark. The image of the legion, the centurion, the emperor, they're just pictures in your mind now, soft and indistinct. Your eyes are getting heavy. You're no longer a soldier, you're just you. The journey is over. The long, winding path through history has come to an end. There is only the here and the now, the soft quiet of the night, and the comfort of your own tired body. Just breathe. Let it all go. The camp is silent now. The fire is just a faint glow. You're safe. You're warm. You can rest.